Hey everyone, so here it is. This is the big recording for game design. This is the one that most of you have been waiting on. So I'm going to, if you didn't notice, 5.03 became available yesterday. So I've been working with K-12 like crazy to get this done for you guys. So I'm going to show you today how to work your way through what is in 5.03 and then the second activity. So I'm going to show you kind of what I would do if it was my game. And obviously you're going to change these things up a little bit to be more like what your game's going to be about. Like the physics may be different depending on what your game design document does. The only thing is to make sure that you actually change your physics. So that's what I'm grading. I'm grading based on, are you changing the physics? Are you messing around with the physics so that they match whatever's in your game design document? And I have your game design documents if you completed Unit 4 like you were supposed to. Or at least the game design document. So let's jump into this video. Hopefully I can do all this in a reasonable amount of time. I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I'm going to try. So the first thing we need to look at is you may run into an issue while you're going through this activity and while you're going through 5.03. If you're double clicking on your script, and you'll see what that is in a second, if you're double clicking on your script and you're not opening in any kind of editor, it's because you don't have the Unity editor. Or you don't have Visual Studios. So you need to do one of two things. Either you need to go online and download a piece of software called Visual Studios, okay, which is the version that they use in the OHS. So if you want it to look exactly like the OHS, you can use Visual Studios, or you can go to Unity 3D, go to Get Unity, and then this is this piece of software that I use. Now, I encourage you to use the one that the OHS uses, so I'll show you where that is as well. Let's go over here, and let's go to Visual Studio. All right, so Visual Studio IDE. Now, this is built into, usually built into Unity. So if you downloaded Unity, if you downloaded the editor, Unity editor, it's already there. You can change in your preferences to it. Actually, I'll show you where it is right now. Maybe we can just do that one. Older versions of Unity, just like we have been doing, go to Unity 5.x and then 5.6.1, Windows, and then editor, 64-bit editor. So this is going to download something called MonoDevelop. And Visual Studios may come with this. If it doesn't and you want to use Visual Studios, you can get Visual Studios here at Microsoft. So free Visual Studios right there at the top. So either one of these pieces of software will work. There may be a few syntax differences and things, but we'll work on that. But you're both going to be using the C# programming language, so it should be just fine. So either one of these, make sure you have one of these editors. And I'll show you how to know if you have one in just a second as we're going through this walkthrough. So I'm going to jump right in. I'm going to do this right off the cuff. I have a few notes to my right, but I'm just going to kind of freelance this and see what happens. Not freelance, but let's just see what happens. So let's create. I did it already today just to make sure I could do it. So let's go to New Project, and we're going to call this project. Now there's a way you're supposed to name this, but I'm just going to call this one Alex Test. Okay, so you know what you're naming your game. And let's go to Create Project. Now we're going to create it in 3D mode, so make sure 3D mode's selected because you're going to be playing around with 3D physics, and the game we're creating, this class, is a 3D game. So we want to go ahead. The first thing you want to do is make sure you click your Inspector tab. That's what you want to be looking at, your inspector. And then the first thing we always do in anything is go to File, Save Scenes. Now, for some reason, and I'm just going to name this one Main. For some reason, in the OHS, they want you to save your scene like at the end of the project, but like it's just a good practice to always save your scene at the beginning, especially with Unity. Just save your scene. Okay, so now we're working inside of our main scene. You can't really see it because my camera's in the way, but I can make my face smaller. It's not like you really need to see my face, but okay, there we go. So we're inside of our main scene. And the first thing that we want to do is create a plane. So the first thing we want to do is add a plane. Now this is stuff you were doing back in 5.02, but I'm going to go ahead and walk through those as well, just so we can get everybody up to speed. So you want to go up here to the top and go to Game Object, 3D Object, Plane. All right, it's going to throw a plane in there. So that's awesome. Now, I like to go ahead and create all my 3D objects at once, but like I said, you can do this however you want, but just pay attention to the steps. That way when you're going through the OHS and it tells you to do something, you remember the steps that I did. So I'm going to go ahead and create all three of my objects. So by the time you're done with the second activity in Unit 5, you're going to have created 2 3D objects. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Game Object, 3D object. I'm gonna create a cube. Okay, now my cube is sunken in, but you can change this very easily by going over here to the inspector and changing your Y to 0.5. 0.5 will set it directly on the plane. So there you go. I think it tells you how to do that in the OHS. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a cube. So I'm going to go to game object, or sorry, not a cube, a sphere. 3D object and sphere. All right, now my sphere is also sitting down there, just like we did by transforming in the inspector. We can grab this little green arrow and we can drag him way up here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pull it way up here. Okay, cool. So now that we're done putting our 3D objects into the game, we're going to create a couple materials to make these things colorful and nice. So the way we do that is really easy. You can either go to this create button over here on the projects pane, or you can right click in your assets folder, go to create, new material. And this is all stuff that we've done before, so I'm going a little fast. We're just going to call this, not blue, we're going to call it blue. All right, now when you click that material, go over here to your inspector. You'll see this little color swatch. Click it. And you can either grab a color off your screen, or we can just make it, let's just make it blue. Obviously, if it's named blue, we should make it blue. And then let's drag that onto our plane. Okay, so now we have our plane, kind of looks like water, right? So the next thing we want to do, and actually, yes, this is how you would create a water surface, but we're not going to do that yet. That's coming. That will come like next unit whenever we start talking about textures and stuff. So the next thing you want to do is create 2 more materials, so that your colors and like all this contrasting, you don't want it to look too, and this is going to be like typical of whatever your game is. Okay, so if you're creating a game that happens to be on grass, you probably want to start with green. All right, so just think about the way your game is. Look at your game design document, and anyway, all right, create new material. Let's call this one green, and then let's create another one, and you'll see right away that I do things in a very unconventional manner. Like I like to create all my materials at once and all my shapes at once and do one thing. It's not really the best way to do it. It's better to go in the way that the OHS tells you to do it. But at least you'll get to see me do this in live time. This is actually how I work with Unity. So all right, so we have our colors. Let's make our block green and our sphere yellow. Well, maybe. All right, so it's right there on the light, which is kind of messing it up. Let's move this guy over just a bit. There we go. That way it's not in the way of my light. Okay, so we've got all of our 3D objects. This is everything we need for both of our activities, actually. We just need these 3 objects. Now, the next thing we want to do, and I want to see what I did next. Oh yeah, we want to adjust the camera. So you always want to adjust the camera. In Unity, this is like the coolest, like the easiest thing. Now you can see my shadows. See, this is the shadows that are being generated by where my light is. And the camera, if you click on it, it's going to give you a little preview of what you would see if you were, watching the game in play mode. So the cool thing is we can manually click and drag this if we want to. That's fine. Or we can kind of do it with the transform. I like doing it in transform. That way I have like total control over where. So let's say I put the Y at 5, which is a little bit high. Then you can go grab the arrow and you can like fine tune it. So let's put it right there. All right. Now let's go to rotation, and then let's rotate the x-axis by 30. And the x-axis is the one that's going to make it like look down. Okay, so now we're looking at it down. Now I can see that I'm a little low on my camera, so I can grab my Y, drag it up, and just fine tune it. And that is the perfect shot right there. That's what I want to see. That's where I want to see my game. All right, so and I could really drag this like over here a little bit and give it like a little kind of a side view thing, But anyway, we're not gonna do that. Okay, cool. All right, that's about perfect. Good. So our camera's adjusted. Now let's adjust our light. Same way, again, super awesome in Unity because they have an actual object. Like anything you create in Unity, any kind of object, it'll usually create a reference point in this visual editor, which is nice because a lot of the game designers or game engines don't do that. So it's really nice that they have a visual reference. You don't have to just find it in your code or in your inspector. So we click on the light, and it'll show you exactly where the sun is pointing, right? So we can adjust this, and you can adjust this in any way that you like. So you can go like way up here, way down here, over here, But anyway, try to make it point directly down to your block. That's probably the best way to do it. And there we go. Now, also, You can change the color of your light, so you can go kind of crazy and change the color of your lights. It can change it to like a red color, which is cool. And you can change the type. So there's directional, there's spotlight, and you can see how this changes. The light will be very concentrated. I don't know if it'll show me anything in preview yet, but yeah, see, it's like very spotlighty. So play around with those functions, you know, that's kind of cool. But for now, I'm going to just change it to directional. Okay, and directional is the one that's kind of like, you know, the sun. It like lights up everything. So we got that done. We've changed our light. We played around with that. So the next thing we need to do is start to I'm going to show you how to create your first script and how to transform one of these objects using a script. So we can transform them by grabbing them and moving them, right? So I could grab it and move it here, and that's where it would start. But I don't want to do that. Let's say I want to do this using code. I'm going to show you how to create your first script and how to move one of these objects with a piece of code. Okay, so I've gotten the most requests in email about this. So let's right click in our assets folder. That's how we add most stuff to it. Create C# script. All right, so here's our first script. We're going to call this handler. I think that's what they tell you to call it in the OHS. Handler. So this handler is going to handle something with one of our objects. And the object that I want to handle is my cube. So let's click on our cube. We're going to go to add component. So this is like so easy. If you really think about it logically, this is why I like Unity. It's so easy to use. We go to add component. And inside of our, now we're going to look and we're going to find our script. So here we go to script right here. And we go to handler. So now you can see a new component has been added to this cube. And now this, whatever we put in this script, applies to this cube, which is really cool. So we don't have to do like this dot whatever like we do in JavaScript, or you know, point it in the direction of this in programming. It already does it in the code. So it's already connected to this object. So we're going to go to, now this is the cool part. So now we need to edit it. Now if you click on it in inspector, it's going to show us our little, it's going to show us what, you know, a little preview of our code. But we're going to double click it and it's going to open it up in the editor of our choice. Now mine's open on another screen. I'm going to drag it in a second, but I want to show you if you want to change what that is. So let's say it's opening in MonoDevelop, but you want it to do Visual Studios or vice versa. Go to edit, preferences. I told you there's a lot in this video, so you're going to watch it a whole bunch of times. We go to edit, preferences, external tools, and then change this to whichever one you want. And if they're both on your computer, or if you have another one and another IDE, which a lot of people use different IDEs, I don't recommend using a different one for this course, but it's up to you. Go to browse and you can find it on your local computer, and then you can use that. So I like MonoDevelop, so I'm going to use MonoDevelop. Now MonoDevelop looks very, very similar to what yours is going to look like in Visual Studios. All right, very similar. The code is exactly the same. The only difference is all these little tools you have, okay? And then the color coding might be a little different. So you have two functions that are already written in every single script that you throw into Unity. There's one called a start function, see, void start, and that one runs one time when you open up your game. So right when you hit play, that script's going to run. Also, we have one that's called void update. An update runs every single frame. So if your game's running at 60 frames per second, this function, everything inside of this runs 60 times per second. Makes sense, right? So anything that we want to happen before our game starts, we want to put inside of our start, or right when it starts. So I want to move that square, which is what this handler is connected to. I want to move that square up just a little bit, okay? So I'm going to run a little piece of code that will allow me to do that. And this is a super easy piece of code. And I'm going to copy and paste it in. Actually, you know what? I'll type it in just for you guys. So we do transform. Okay, transform. So transform is an object. Well, actually, sorry, Unity Engine is an object we're using. That's the module we're using. And then we're going to go transform dot. Okay, so you guys remember transform is that inside your inspector where it said transform and it had your X, Y, Z axis. Well, the cool thing about those, the way you do this, the way that you access that stuff using programming is you just write the name of it, right? Which is really cool. So transform, so we want that. Dot translate. Now translate is a function that's written into Unity, and you can find every function in Unity. You can find every function that Unity can use in the Unity documentation. So check that out. And then inside of this, I know that it takes a vector 3, which it actually tells us that it does right there, which means vector 3 is 3 different points on a plane. So we know that's our x, y, and z. So let's do 0, 1, 0, and then we're going to end it with a semicolon. So what we're saying right here, is that when the game starts, right when I hit play, I want you to access the transform, access the coordinates of the cube, and then I want you to run this function called .translate, which changes those values, and I want you to change them to 0, 1, 0. Okay, so we're gonna save it and let's see what happens. So Control S to save. We're gonna exit out of MonoDevelop. Just hit your X, and it's now updated. See that right there in our update preview? If we click on our handler, it shows us that it's updated. Now, in theory, when I hit play, this cube should lift up just a bit. So let's see what happens. And there it is. It's off the ground. See that? It is hovering, like literally hovering off the ground. That's really cool. All right, so it has changed by 1. All right. And now remember, it didn't just change it by 1. It actually added 1 to the value. Remember, it was set at 0.5, and then we have 1.5. And that's important to kind of pay attention to watch how different functions, you know, some functions, the way they're written, they add to the values. Some of them replace the values. So make sure you're paying attention to that. All right, so we're getting somewhere. So we have our script. That's awesome. Now we know how to manipulate them in the script. But let's, now I want to, we have both of them in the air now when we hit play. But I want to make them drop and fall to the ground. So in my game that I'm making, and this is where it'll differ for you a little bit. In my game, it's going to mimic the physics of the real world. Okay, I want it to be more like real physics, like, you know, rigid body, like hard objects. When they hit, they collide and they bounce, or they collide and they hit each other. So I'm going to make that the case. Now, the way you do that is by messing around with the physics of your objects. Now, this is the part in the OHS that for some reason they just don't tell you, and it drives me crazy. They're like, make them collide. How do you do that, right? So let's figure that out today. So what we're going to do is we're going to mess with the physics of all 3 of our objects. So let's click on our plane first. Now, our plane does not have any physics already. There's no physics on this. So same way you do everything else in Unity, go to Add Component, and let's add some physics. Okay, so physics, and there's all kinds of different, like, I mean, there's terrain, there's like all kinds of cool stuff. I'm just gonna do rigid body for now. Now please feel free to like mess with all this stuff. Like there's spring joint, fixed joint, hinge joint, cloth, wheel collider, terrain, sphere. Like all this stuff is like super cool, and there's really cool things. But I'm just gonna do rigid body. And rigid body is like, you can think of it as like an object that just like, you know, falls, like everything in the world, right? So we're gonna give it a mass of 1. That's fine. We're going to leave all this. You guys have played with physics a little bit in the first activity, I hope. We're going to use gravity, and then we're going to say is kinematic. Now, what that means is it's not going to move. This object is going to stay, and that's what we want because it's our rigid body, or it's our plane. And we don't want to use gravity because we don't want it to be manipulated by gravity. If it's manipulated by gravity, then it won't, like, you know, it'll fall. We don't want it to fall. We want it to stay right there. And then let's just leave that alone. Let's go to kinematic and let's hit play and see what happens. Nothing, right? Now, something is happening, all right? Something is different. Our plane is now like sturdy, but our objects aren't doing anything. So let's change those. So click on the cube, add component, physics, rigid body. Now, we want to use gravity on our cube because we want it to fall, right? So we're going to leave that alone. And we're going to go to our ball. We're going to add component, physics, and we're going to add rigid body. Use gravity, absolutely. And then we're going to save everything. Control S to save your project. And let's hit play and see what happens. Perfect. So that's how I want my game to work. I want my game to mimic real life, which is what this is doing. Now, let's change up some of this stuff. Let's do this. Let's move our block like way up here, and let's change the block's mass to 100. I don't know what this is gonna do. Let's see. Control S to save and play. Doom. Oh yeah. See how the change? So that's like that was a big change. Not only did it not just fall and roll off, but the mass of this ball is so much that it actually knocks the block over, and then you can see it's still rolling, but it rolls much, much slower, and it's also much harder to stop. I could prove that if I had another object over here. So we've got the beginnings of a game. We've started to play around with the physics. We've created 2 objects of our own, and then we've manipulated the way that they react to the world that we've created. Now that's what's cool about our world. We can do whatever we want in it. You don't have to make it mimic real life. I'm going to put 0.5. You can make it do whatever you want. Let's hit play and see what happens. See, now it's a little bit softer. What if we do 0.1? Can we go down to 0.1? Can we do 0.1? I don't even know if you could probably do negatives. I don't even know. I haven't played around with it in a while. Let's see. And I'm just playing around right now. Doop. Yeah, it's a little bit lighter. So there we go. So change up your, so this is what you would need to do in order to pass the second activity. You need to create 2 objects, a plane, and then you need to use their physics. You need to play around with their physics until they match what you wanted your game to be. All right. So if you were doing a game that was set in like the real world, you would want it to do this. If you wanted it, if you had a game that was set in space or like maybe on the moon, it's a totally different world, right? Totally different physics. You need to manipulate your drag and your mass until it mimics the movement that you may have on the moon. So I hope that this walkthrough kind of helped you guys out. This is a huge walkthrough. There's a lot of stuff, and I've been ranting forever, but this is what you need right here. This is the big one. Go back and watch this video as many times as you want. I'm going to bring this recording into class today, and I'm going to sit there while you watch it, and then I'm going to be answering questions. So I'm probably answering your questions right now as you're watching me talk about answering your questions, which is kind of cool. If you need anything from me, just reach out to me. Let's get this stuff done. We got 2 weeks left. You got the final coming up. It's going to be awesome. Thank you guys so much for working so hard. Just reach out to me if you need anything, and I will see you in class very, very soon. Bye.